Welcome to Taking It to the Next Level, a Minnesota Collegiate DECA podcast where we will discuss the world of DECA and talk to professionals about what makes someone successful in today's world. I am the president of Minnesota Collegiate DECA, Zach Spohn. My guest today is the executive vice president, of Collegiate DECA, Hannah Smolicz. Hannah is a sophomore currently at the University of Connecticut, where she is majoring in business administration. How are you today, Hannah?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this today. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So Hannah, to start out, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself personally? What are you interested in? How did you first get involved in DECA maybe? I don't know where you want to start. It's up to you.
Yeah, I'll start with how I first got involved in DECA, and it was my sophomore year of high school. And my chapter was fairly new, so I didn't know a lot about the organization, but my advisor just asked me to be involved since I was doing some like the smaller business classes as an underclassman. And I chose to do the advertising campaign, and I worked really hard at it, and I absolutely just loved it. Found out I loved business, got to go to ICDC, and then from there I just continued. I was a local officer, a state officer, attended all the national conferences. I just fell in love with all the people, the passion, and it was amazing to find out what I wanted to do, like industries I liked, industries I didn't like, which I think is really useful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I knew I just had to continue. So last year I started a chapter at the University of Connecticut where I attend, and then decided to apply for executive office, which I absolutely love. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been a really great ride.
Good. You talked about it a little bit, but what would you say is maybe like the predominant reason or the main reason that once you got involved in DECA? I always think that this is an interesting question. Why did you stay? Like, what made you really stick? Like, you made it sound like as soon as you were involved, you were drawn to it
Yeah.
and you knew that this is something you wanted to do. Why do you think that was the case?
Well, I loved the competition that I was involved in.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I went to that national conference, obviously I think that conference has like the most passionate DECA members for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, because you have all of your executive officers, state officers, your top competing members. And I think that's what I fell in love with the passion of all of those people there. And as time went on, I just found out more about the opportunities. And most of all, I just wanted to help other students figure out about, what DECA was and what it could do for them, just because I was so grateful about everything that it showed me.
Yeah, it's definitely contagious, isn't it? And it's kind of, once
Yeah.
you're involved, it's definitely something where you feel like you have to be part of it, because like you said, the people really want to keep you going, and competition is definitely on
Yeah,
top
if you're
of being
competitive.
on top of being something good for people that are competitive. It's also definitely you're learning useful skills you're going to need
Oh yeah.
in a career as well.
Definitely.
So you talked about how you've held leadership positions throughout your time in DECA. So now you are the executive vice president of Collegiate DECA. What does that job exactly mean for people listening that might not know? What do you do? What does the job entail? That sort of thing.
Well, basically in a nutshell, my job is to facilitate different DECA programs and events and activities that DECA Inc. wants to give to members. So, that includes all of our usual activities like challenges, the competition, different types of connections. But that also means as an executive officer that you get to have the opportunity to implement your own ideas, which in my opinion is the best part, because we really get to see, what do I think DECA members need more of. And then you're able to create, basically anything you really want to. Obviously, there's an approval process. You work with the other officers. Everyone works cohesively really well. And you just get to improve the organization like you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about Hannah, her story, what she does now. So now we're going to talk a little bit about her experience of starting a chapter at the University of Connecticut and what that's like for maybe students listening who, like Hannah, weren't involved in DECA in high school. And like she said, it was a great experience. I've talked about on this show before about how being involved in DECA in high school really helped me out as a student and as a person as well. But once she got to college, there wasn't a chapter at her college. So I guess she can talk a little bit about the process of starting a chapter. Maybe first about how it maybe came about, and then we can talk about maybe how you could help or what tips you might have to make other people successful starting their own chapter as well.
So what pushed me to create a chapter at the University of Connecticut was my state officer turn my senior year. I had an amazing team. We were able to be successful in a lot of the things that we personally wanted to get done, which was amazing. And everything it went so well. ICDC was an amazing time with them. And I mean, I fell in love with it even more. And I was like, I need to do this in college. There's no way I can't. Especially because, one of my past dreams from, I think since junior year of high school, I always wanted to be a national officer. So I figured, why not do it at the collegiate level? Eventually, of course, after I got the chapter up and started. But I decided to create a chapter at Stanford, UConn, because that's actually just one of the branches. The main campus is up in Storrs, Connecticut, where one of my ex-state officers actually is attending school. And he also wanted to create a chapter. So we worked together to create like an overall UConn chapter where there would be a Stanford club and then up at Storrs as well. So it ended up working really well. And we had a lot of great activities planned. Obviously, with COVID, it shut a lot down, a lot of the things we wanted to do. But it really is a process, to get a new chapter started, specifically with our university, because you have to meet a million guidelines. And, I'm at a state school. It's a very big school. There's a lot of guidelines. They're very, very picky in what you have to get done. So in terms of the most difficult things to really do when beginning a chapter, I think is working with your university, because working with DECA was the easy part.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think even I attended state school too, and even working with DECA is never the problem. It's even when you're established as a chapter like we are, and we're at MSUM, even navigating state guidelines and everything else at the state school is difficult when you're already established as a chapter. So I can imagine that starting one is an even more difficult task as well.
Yes.
Definitely is. So you talk about a little bit how you started up. Was there what was like the most important step you think as far as starting a chapter went? Was it finding faculty that would help you out? Was it administrators that would help you out? Was it, I don't know, your own drive and persistence? What I know there's probably not one good answer, but if you could talk a little bit about that, maybe what was the biggest thing in actually getting it done?
I would say gaining membership, because my university gave us a really hard time with attending the organization fairs, the involvement fairs at our school. So there's a point where we couldn't even get into those because of like a very complicated training situation, between my branch and the main campus, because the main campus has everything. So we have to go there for literally everything, and it's 2 hours away. So that was very difficult, but I mean, eventually reaching out to friends, creating flyers, doing different newsletters, figuring all that out, and just finding creative ways around that. Eventually got our membership up to, a decent amount for our first year chapter, obviously. So that was definitely the most difficult part of first creating the chapter.
It's good to know, because I mean, I know that a lot of students, they definitely struggle with the things we've talked about, like when you're starting a chapter, navigating everything you need to navigate it bureaucracy wise to actually get a chapter started. But like you said, if
Yep.
there's enough determined amount of students that they can
Yeah.
get it done, where there's a will, there's a way, kind of.
Yeah. Plus, in my branch, there wasn't barely anybody that has been involved in DECA before, because my branch is very small. It's only a few thousand kids, and almost no one has gone to DECA or even knows what it is. So, every time you say DECA, you have to explain exactly what it is. And I feel like sometimes that takes a little while because it's so complex.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that
Yeah,
was difficult too.
there's not always a good one-liner to be like, this is what DECA is. It's a bit
Yeah,
more.
like you think you figured it out, and then you get like 10 follow-up questions. I'm like, all
Yeah.
right.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
Yep,
but that's part of the reason why it's so enjoyable too. You can get so much from it, and um,
true.
have so many great experiences and as well.
Yep,
Um,
definitely.
so that's starting a chapter a little bit. We can expound off this a little bit. When we just kind of talked about it, when someone asks what DECA is a little bit, what is your common response, I would guess? How do you describe it to get those new members kind of interested, not necessarily on board, but how do you get them to keep coming back? Because obviously you had a little bit of success. I mean, you started your own chapter
Yeah.
through all that as well. So
hmm
yeah, what does that pitch kind of sound like?
So I guess my simple explanation to members is that it's a student-led business organization. Um, and, I always make sure to say it's an international organization, because I think that students really get excited about that. It's a big organization, a lot of states involved, a lot of countries involved. It's obviously important, even if you haven't heard it before. Um, and then, I think one of the things that I was so excited about originally joining DECA was that competition, because I'm just a competitive person, and I feel like a lot of students are who, want to be involved in things. So I always make sure to, talk about the fact that we have an international competition with, a national destination every year. We host national conferences, and it's just a career development organization to get you prepared for life. Because, I mean, in the long run, that's what Collegiate DECA is really about, preparing you for, the rest of your life, your career.
Mm-hmm. And I always, my pitch has always been, no matter your major, like obviously we're geared towards the
Yep.
business world and business environment, but the skills you take away from being involved in DECA, I think translate to just life as well as anything else you can have in your like in your post-secondary or your college career. I mean, the skills you take away are going to be beneficial no matter what you want to do the rest of your life. You're going to learn how to communicate with other people well. You, like you said, the professional development side that you need no matter what you're doing. Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
So that's getting people involved in starting a chapter. Yep. So you start a chapter. How does a chapter, do you want to talk about chapter development a little bit? How does a chapter grow? How does a chapter, I don't know, like I said, grow and continue to be successful, I guess, whether that's competition wise or, like we said, getting members those great skills?
So first, in terms of membership, I think it's about finding creative ways and taking advantage of, everything your school has to offer in terms of getting members, visiting business classes or even freshman university classes, when that's possible again. Student involvement fairs, flyers, email newsletters. And there's a million things you could do to gain members. And I think once you have that solid base, in addition to a solid student officer group, because that is also incredibly important, I think you really have to make your chapter unique. Obviously, DECA is an international organization that has many conferences, challenges, the competition, and a lot of chapters are doing the same thing as each other. So I think one of the most important things is making sure, your chapter is unique. And you want to find new ideas for, your chapter to connect within, in terms of finding mentorship opportunities, other professionals, preparing for the competition, engaging in those challenges, doing your own business challenges. But you also want to make sure you branch out and even get other clubs involved to like co-events. And again, connecting with professionals, guest speakers, finding mentors for your students. You really have to find your own flow, and I guess your own events and activities that your students care about, because it's not going to be the same at every university.
That's a very good point. Especially, I think that's especially true in college, especially how you have to make it unique, different from high school, because in college, like we kind of said before, DECA is definitely geared towards business, but there may be other students involved that are doing something other than business. I know my chapter, we have a lot of communications folks, a lot of paralegal folks, because I mean, you need those, like that's maybe unique to us, but I don't think it's completely unique to other chapters across the country either. I mean, it's definitely going to be unique to each chapter, what works and what can ultimately make their chapter successful, and however they define success as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that's one thing, make the chapter unique and make those experiences unique for members. You also touched a bit about how officer team is really important. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that's especially true for any engine to go. You need the conductors to be doing their job as well.
Yeah, because once you have a good officer team, you're really able to have great organization and get other members engaged and to have fun and be excited about the same thing you are. So I think, in some organizations or universities, it starts with one person realistically, and then they have to branch out and find a whole team, and then their team has to find an advisor and then members. So it's a whole process of finding people that are also excited about the organization, but your officers have to be the most excited. So you have to, I think, trying to find people that have either been involved in DECA before or are currently looking for leadership opportunities. That's important, because people, they want something to put on their resume, and then I think you can kind of reel them in with everything. And then once you start tasking responsibilities as the president, you're able to keep those officers involved. So I think you could definitely build a strong officer team that way.
Mm-hmm. And you make a good point about how they have to be excited about what they're doing as well. But you also said that they need to be the most excited. They need to be the ones that want to lead. I think that a lot of times when officer teams get frustrated with the way things might be going in their chapter, it might just be because they might have some unrealistic expectations about not necessarily about how things are going to go, or maybe how and that's fine, but I think you should also need to know that you're going to be the one most invested in your chapter. That's kind of your job as leading the chapter. It's not to make every single member of your chapter as invested in it as you are.
Of course, because it's not realistic, or else they would have been an officer already.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or they'd sign up.
Yeah, exactly. Your job is to make it as positive and as unique and important and valuable as experience for them as you possibly can, and that's why officers are in the jobs that they are. I mean, I think that's a pretty common misconception, but I think you make a good point that that's definitely the case. That
and to make sure officers are all different grade levels, because if they're all seniors, they're all leaving next year. So prepare for the long run. Yeah,
that's definitely true too. You got to build leadership in your chapter too. You got to be able to leave something behind. That's another reason why chapters maybe fall off or anything, something like that. It's because the leadership leaves, basically, which makes things tough.
That happens a lot. Very common.
Yeah. Well, Hannah, do you have anything to add on the chapter development side at all?
Well, I would like to add that, part of my goal this year was to provide resources for either new chapters or chapters looking to, grow and develop themselves. So for that, I first have created a workshop for, growing chapters. And of course, on this podcast, I can't say everything that I'd ever want to say, which is why I created that workshop. And, any chapter can sign up for that, any officer team, and it's doable through Zoom. So if anyone's interested and wants to know more, let me know. And then there's also going to be a resource guide for new chapters that will be coming out soon that I've created along with my fellow executive officer, Sean. And that's also going to be very helpful specifically for those new chapters, helping them just get kickstarted and keep going.
Awesome. That's great. How can chapters or officers get in touch with you if they're interested in that workshop, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so first you could always message me on Instagram, see DECA VP Hannah. That's probably the easiest way. But you could also just email me. It's on the DECA Inc. website under Collegiate Executive Officers. It's hannah@decaofficers.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Hannah. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, of course.
Throughout our series of podcasts leading up to the state conference in February, the state officer team will continue to share their own stories and the stories of others surrounding Minnesota Collegiate DECA and National DECA as well. Once again, I'd like to thank Hannah for being my guest today. As you've all heard, Hannah is obviously an impressive individual and is a valuable resource to all of the members across Collegiate DECA, and we're lucky to have her on the national officer team. I'm Zach Spohn. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.